Good afternoon, everybody. We are live streaming our Lunch and Learn. Welcome to those who are here live now and to all of you who will be watching us later. We are going to begin with a blessing for the study of Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Paul, we lost your picture. Judy Kahn, welcome. It's nice to have you with us. For those of you, let me introduce Judy, who probably is online with a lot of the things that happen here at Shomer Torah, but we don't always get a chance to see her. She is the mother of one of my dearest friends from rabbinical school, who to this day is still one of my dearest friends. His name is Rob Kahn, and he made Aliyah with his family many, many years ago and is doing great in Israel. So, Judy, it's so nice to have you with us.
Thank you.
And Judy lives in Oregon, which is interesting because I received an email from more than once now, actually, from a woman who also lives in Oregon who watches our Lunch and Learn either on Facebook or online. Kathleen, wherever you are, it's nice that you are out there, and you are all welcome to join us in person to do a little bit of learning and a dialogue exchange. But I'm glad that whether you're here now or you watch the Lunch and Learn at a later date, that you continue to learn with us. I do want to make one advertising comment. Seth wants to remind everybody that we have this wonderful opportunity with the Jewish Women's Theater. It's now called The Braid. They are going to be performing live here on December 4th, Saturday evening. We're going to gather. We're going to light Hanukkah candles together. We'll do Havdalah together. There's going to be a wine and cheese reception prior to this with a discussion by the writer and director of the show. And then dessert following. You can also watch it online so that if you live in Oregon or anywhere else, you can sign up for free, I think, online to enjoy the show. There is a cost coming in for the cost of the food, but we do hope that it's an opportunity for our community locally to be able to come and enjoy one another's company. So that is Arise, My Friend, My Beautiful One, and Go Forth, Saturday, December 4th, The Braid.
Can I have a question? If I can't see it at the time, is it going to be recorded?
We're not allowed to, no, because
okay.
Very simply because the actors are all union and part of that whole world, and they don't allow it to be recorded. So, yes. It's a wonderful organization, The Braid, in particular because my daughter just got a fellowship with them. She was working for them during COVID, doing their online stage managing, and she continues to be part of that wonderful organization. And we've had them many, many years here doing their shows. Okay, let's get started. Let me share the screen with all of you so we can get to a little bit of Torah now. Whoops, let me get to the beginning of, okay, here we are. Could everybody see it?
No, not exactly.
Uh-oh.
And see the top.
Yeah, I think he means it's not open fully, Rabbi. It's kind of long view.
Hold on, let me stop sharing and let me start to share again. Is that better?
That's better.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Neil, for piping up. Otherwise, I would never have known. So,
you never know when I'm there.
well, when I say piping up, I don't say that as an insult, obviously. Okay, so each week that we've been learning this year, the Sfat Emet, it has been a difficult learning, but we've done a wonderful job of getting through the texts and being enlightened by the wisdom of Rabbi Aaron Smokler, who is sharing the text through IJS. Today's topic is no less complicated, but hopefully we'll get through this and walk away feeling enriched, inspired, and challenged to think about our lives as they relate to Jacob and what he teaches us about what it means to live in this world and be connected to our physical well-being, people around us, and God. All of that in 55 minutes. So, yes, George.
Well, I'll start off. There's a lot in there, but
Oh, wait, hold on a second, George. Before we jump in, let's look at the text.
okay, yeah.
So let's start with the opening verses.
Yeah.
Lior, did you want to read for us? Or
That I can do. Thank you. וישלח יעקב מלאכים לפניו אל עשיו אחיו ארצה, שעיר שדה אדום, ויצווה אותם לאמור, כה תאמרו לאדוני לעשיו, כה אמר עבדך יעקב, עם לבן גרתי, ואחר עד עתה. ויהי לי שור וחמור צאן ועבד ושפחה, וישלחך להגיד לאדוני למצוא חן בעיניי.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. So Jacob sent messengers ahead to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom, and instructed them as follows. So that's the introduction. This is the key point. And what I want you to do as I read this, as Leora just read it, I want you to think about, what do you notice in Jacob's message to Esau? What's missing and what's emphasized? So here it is. Thus you shall say to my lord Esau, thus says your servant Jacob, I stayed with, the Hebrew word garti is going to be important. I stayed with Lavan and remained until now. I have acquired cattle, asses, sheep, and male and female slaves, and I send this message to my Lord in the hope of gaining your favor. So, what do you notice in this message? What's there? What's not there? What's emphasized? What's ignored? That's the questions that I have for us to begin with. George, go ahead, and then Paul.
Well, you're talking about garti, two things. First of all, it implies temporary. But the second part is garti. Numerically, it adds to 613, which implied he observed the mitzvot while in a different place.
So let's take each comment first. So your first comment is garti implies the
Temporary.
Hebrew word
Here,
implies a temporary dwelling.
Yeah.
So in other words, what does that mean, George?
he's only going to be there. He was going to be there permanently.
Okay, so he was never planning on staying
yeah,
permanently
yeah.
with Lavan. It was only a temporary
Yeah.
dwelling.
But he observed all the laws. He observed 613.
And you get that again. Explain one more time.
Okay, Garti. If you look at the letters, it adds up to 613. For example, the Gimel is 3,
Yeah.
Resh is 200, the Tav is 600, and the Yud is 10.
Okay.
That's 613, implied he observed the mitzvot.
Okay, so I think what George is saying here is, the second comment that George is making is, he's referring to a very famous midrash, which Rashi actually mentions, which we're going to look at in a minute, that why does Jacob use this word garti? Why does he tell him that he dwelled here? It is code to let him know, let Esau know that he observed the mitzvot while he was living with his father-in-law Lavan, which is interesting in and of itself because there are no mitzvot because the Torah hasn't been given. So there aren't any mitzvot, although according to the Midrash, even though the Torah wasn't officially given to our patriarchs and our matriarchs, they actually did observe the mitzvot. And this is one of the examples. And it's used, and again, as George said, the gematria, the value of the Hebrew letters of Gimel, Resh, Taf, Yud, equates to 613. And so that's a clue to Esau that Jacob remained true to the traditions of his father's household. George, thank you for both of those comments. Okay, Paul and then Ellen, and then Ilan.
Although you say that the patriarchs knew and observed the mitzvot, we got to remember that Abraham served his guests milk and meat at the same time. That's not what I want to say, though. It's obvious to me that.
Well, wait, not only that, Paul, but Jacob marries two sisters, and that also is not allowed in the Torah
That's right.
later on.
That's
So
right. What's
I think
very
it's more,
obvious here is Esau is the Lord and Jacob is the servant, whereas it should be the opposite, since he got the blessing and the birthright. So Jacob, I believe, is trying to assuage and consider sensitively the feelings of Esau, that he had all this resentment for so long.
very nice. So Paul is reminding us that by stealing the birthright and the blessing, Jacob actually became the Lord over his older brother. So when Jacob says what he says it very calculating. He's saying, even though I may have taken the birthright and the blessings, in reality, you still are the older brother and I am your servant. A very smart psychological and emotional behavior by Jacob. Thank you, Paul. Ellen, Ilan, and then Marilyn.
Thank you for that point, because that was similar to what I was thinking. But in some ways, then it goes on to what I think these days is called humble bragging. You know, yes, I'm your servant, but I am so damn rich, you better watch it.
So Ellen points out something very interesting. He doesn't leave it as I am your servant. He actually mentions that he's a wealthy guy, which begs the question, why does he need to mention that he's a wealthy guy? How does that help in some way Jacob's potential encounter with his brother by letting his brother know that he's got a lot of cattle, ass, sheep, and slaves? What is that doing? Right? That, I think, Ellen, is the underlying question of your comment. And so I would love, after we hear from Ilan and Marilyn, to go back to that question. Why do you think Jacob emphasizes his wealth? But first, before we get there, let's go to Ilan and Marilyn.
I saw it opposite. He's not saying in plural. He's saying single oxen, single donkey, one slave and one female slave. He's trying to be humble. He's not coming as strong and saying, I am rich, I'm powerful. He's coming and saying, be quiet, relax, I am very little. I did not succeed. I don't have children, I don't have a wife. The key thing was to go to Lavan and get a wife, not get wealthy. And that's what Isaac told him. And he is saying, I didn't succeed. Don't worry, my children will not fight with your children, as it was told to Rebecca. So he's humble. But
Wait, Ilan, hold on. That you just said something so beautiful that I want to make sure that everybody understands where you're getting that from. Go back, everybody, and look at the Hebrew. If you understand the Hebrew, the last line where it says right here, Vayehi li shor v'chamor tzon ve'eved v'shivcha. So what Ilan is pointing out in the Hebrew is that it's every one of those words is in the singular. The English translation that I gave you, I have acquired cattle, asses, sheep, and male and female slaves, implies something that actually is not in the text itself. The way that Ilan is reading it is exactly the way the text says it. Singular, I have one ox, I have one donkey, I have one sheep, I have one slave and one female slave. Thereby implying that I failed miserably and you shouldn't hold it against me. Very good, Ilan. Thank you. Now, to your second comment.
It's very important that he knows that Esav is in Har Seir, in the Mount of Seir. He knows that Esav left Canaan. Esav left Canaan before he knew that Jacob will come back. And he gave Canaan to Yaakov. Esav is fulfilling the command of Isaac that this land belongs to Yaakov. That he got the blessing, he got the land, the field, and the trees when he gave his will, his blessing under cheating things. But Esav accepts it. He's saying, I am leaving Canaan, all Canaan is yours. And all of this happened before Yaakov is entering the land of Canaan, because Har Seir, Mount Seir, is on the Jordan side of the river, on the east, which means God is still on the hook to promise him success, because God said, I will protect you until you come here to this Bet El, to this Hamakom Hazeh, this place. And he didn't come yet. He's on the other side of the Jordan.
Very
So
nice.
that's what I see.
Very nice. Thank you. Excellent. Okay, Marilyn.
Just going by the English, there's nothing personal here. I mean, there's no, you're my brother and I, maybe that's a modern interpretation. So I sort of find it cold and calculating. I think when he was saying I've acquired cattle, etc., that he's trying to curry his favor. Say, aha, well, you got the stuff. Maybe you'll share it with me, But there's not, how are you doing? I haven't seen you, I hope you're well.
Very nice, Marilyn. Excellent. So you're emphasizing, I think, something really important. What's missing is any personal message about those 20 years. As Elon just told us, he doesn't mention anything about his two wives or his concubines, so to speak, the mothers of his 12 sons and 13th daughter, nothing about his experiences with Lavan, nothing about, hey, how's dad? What's going on with mom? Nothing there at all. Excellent. Great. Okay, Leora?
It feels like when you read it, Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim, he was scared. He was scared to go there himself. So, that's why he kind of butter up everything with soft words. I didn't succeed. I'm not that good. You are the master. So
very nice.
Here is what I see.
No question that one can feel in these words great fear and trepidation, justifiably, given that when he last was with his brother, he heard his brother wanted to kill him. So it would make sense for Jacob to feel that kind of fear. Thank you, Leora. I want to go back for a minute to Ellen's comment. Even though, as Elon said, the text itself reads that he only has one of everything, the midrash and the way in which the text is read, it is understanding more of the way that Ellen reads it, that he's a wealthy guy. If indeed that is the way in which it's traditionally been read, even though Elon really pointed out a beautiful comment that it's not literally the way it is, why do you think he wants to emphasize his wealth to his brother, Ziggy?
Because he's a smart man and he wants to make sure that the guy doesn't kill him. So he's willing to share some of his wealth with his older brother.
Okay, so perhaps what Ziggy's saying is, hey, I have this wealth and I'm happy to give it to you because I stole the birthright in advance. So I've got plenty to give you. You don't have to feel like I'm here to take anything. I want to share all of what's mine with you because it was deservedly yours in the first place. Good, nice read. Elon. And then Ruth Ann.
If I want to argue that it's a little, not more, Yaakov, Rivka, when Rebecca, his mother, left Betuel, she was supposed to get a gift of a wedding gift. And according to the law, if a father doesn't give a daughter anything, the brother, upon his death, the brother must split half the metaltelin,
The chattel, the property.
yes,
thing.
half with the women, with the sister, equal share, and they were only brother and sister, so Yaakov was entitled to half of the property of Lavan without a day of work, just to take the gift of his mother. And he has to share it with his brother, Esav. So he's telling him, I didn't get that piece. I didn't succeed in getting half of Lavan property if you thought about it. But then later when Yaakov is splitting the camp into two and he's running in peace, at that moment he thought, oh, he did get, and he's giving me half. Here is my half and here is his half. So all of this is a playing, and it's not clear if he's telling him I'm rich or I'm poor. But there is a lot of things involved in this relation between them.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I love the way you read the text, Elon. Thank you. Ruth Ann, and then Rachel, and then George, and then we're going to move on to the Rashi. So Ruth Ann, Rachel, George.
In the translation, the Hebrew translation, it definitely is singular. So why would, in the Midrash and in this translation, where do they go from? I mean, where's the step? Where do they go from changing?
Because in the Hebrew, tson, singular, also can imply tson, flocks, many.
Oh, but for all of the thing?
Well, you would say for shifcha.
Yeah, right, I know that.
Shifchot, you would say
Okay,
plural, or Evid, you would say avadim. But once you have the poetic singular of all of the animals, the text gives it singular. But I actually think
asses is plural, isn't it? Asses and slaves, female slaves.
No, I'm saying they could be written in plural. That's true. But I think there's poetry to everything being in the singular. And I also think it allows for the multiplicity of interpretations that we have between Ellen and Elon. And therefore, the question, where really is Jacob at? And what is he really attempting to do to his brother? By creating it this way, where it can be both read in the singular or the plural, it leaves so much up to the imaginations of the readers to try to understand Jacob's intentions.
So it purposely wants the questioning contradiction.
I think so, exactly. Yes. Rachel.
Thanks, Rabbi Shalom. So I guess for me, this brings questions in that if I were to interpret it with it being a matter of wealth, it's interesting because I'm curious about what this means about who is Yaakov, like as far as in his personality or whatever. Like, is it that he feels bad about everything and he's truly wanting to reconcile? Since if he has the wealth, he certainly could have been pompous, right? He could have just been like, whatever, who cares, So I'm curious if there's thoughts or midrash, whatever, on kind of who the character of Jacob is. And because he is a patriarch, then of course he's going to be, spun in a positive way, right? Redemptive manner. So
it's a mix. There's a mix of midrashim. There are the majority of the commentators paint a picture of Jacob as a saint and paint a picture of Esau as a sinner. And they read into Esau much more than I think the text actually shows. And they do that because they view Esau paradigmatically as representing Edom, Rome, the people, the nation that destroyed the Jewish homeland and exiled the Jews and enslaved the Jews and eventually went on to become Christianity. So for the Midrashim, there's a lot of heaviness of heart that they place upon Esau. The text itself, which you can see is so vague, leaves some Midrashim, some commentators to say Jacob really is contrite and sincere in his desire, and others that he's still a calculating character trying to protect himself and his family. And who was it? George? Yes. And then we're going to go on to the
Yeah, just a comment, a few comments ago about the bride is supposed to get a share, you know, if she doesn't get it, whatever, you know, a few commentators ago. Is that Jewish law? Because they were in a different law, you know, with Laban.
This is Hammurabi law.
Oh, Hammurabi.
And I think it's 181, but I'm not that sure.
Okay.
And he's saying exactly that a father will give a gift. If he dying without giving any gift, then the women share. Now, this makes a big difference between farmers and shepherds. A woman of a farmer will get a pillow and a spoon. A woman of a shepherd will get half of the sheep because they are moving, they are not land. So that's why those women are very rich and very powerful. And that's Hammurabi law. There was no Jewish law at the time, but Hammurabi was in that area, in Haran.
Thank you, Ilan. Okay, so now let's take a look at the Rashi. And both comments in the Rashi are ones that George mentioned in his opening comment. So, and I promise you I did not send this to George in advance, but it was pretty remarkable that his opening comment leads right to a discussion that we're going to have right now. First, so Rashi comments on the verb garti, I sojourned. And he implies, what he's saying is by Jacob saying that, the implication is the following. I have become neither a prince nor other person of importance, but merely a sojourner. Remember what George said in his opening comment? He said ger implies a temporal nature. And a temporal nature means that he wasn't living there long enough to establish a presence so that he could become a person of power and importance during his sojourn with Lavan. He's thereby implying, what is the question, which we'll come back to in a minute. Here he says it is not worth your while to hate me on account of the blessings of your father who blessed me. Right? Be master over your brethren, for it has not been fulfilled in me. In other words, the fact that I say garti is to let you know I am a lowly person. I have not achieved much of anything, and there's no reason for you to still be mad after 20 years. Because even though Dad gave me the blessing, the fact is, it wasn't fulfilled. I'm a nobody. You're much more powerful than I am. That's what garti, according to Rashi, implies. And the second comment that George makes is another explanation. The word garti has the numerical value of 613, taryag, the 613 mitzvot, as much to therefore say, though I have sojourned with Lavan, the wicked, I have observed the 613 divine commandments, and I have learned not of his evil way. In other words, implying that, yeah, Paul?
I like what you said about this idea of I've gotten nothing out. You know, I stole a birthright, but it didn't come to fruition. Also, he got the birthright through deceit. And now the consequence of his behavior is he was deceived by Laban. So he's already suffered the consequence of, you know, it's karma. It came back to haunt him.
Good. Excellent. Excellent. Yes, Leora.
In the comment for the deception, it seems like Yaakov became a person that knows how to deceive people. First, he did that with his father, and now he's doing that with his brother. Because even though, you know, he did very well at Lavan's, He's, humbly saying, I have nothing.
Good.
So,
Very good. So it seems that even though he got his karma and should have learned a lesson, here he is still trying to manipulate the situation and downplay the wealth that he has, so that, the implication for his brother is, why would you want to fight me? I'm a nobody. Nice. Neil and then Ziggy.
Question is, what is the fact that he doesn't emphasize any family? Mean there? Is it that the family was considered not very outstanding in those days, or is it the fact that by showing no family and no offspring or anything, that he's a very impotent guy? What is he showing there?
Excellent question, right? Really an excellent question. The fact that he doesn't mention, hey, I've got a couple of wives and 13 children, calls out to us, right? It says, Darshani, explain me, interpret me. Why is he so silent on that? Is it because he wants to show impotence and the fact that he became a nobody? Is he afraid that if he mentions that his large family, that Esau will become jealous and want to take his wives for himself and his children for himself? These are really good questions that the text does not define for us in any way, but the absence of him saying that certainly raises the question, as Neil said, what does it mean and what might it imply? Good. Ilan. Wait, Ilan, you're muted.
We know from Abraham that he said, all the wealth you gave me in Egypt and the 4 kings is nothing because I go without a child. So the most important is children. And he is not saying it so he can, if there will be trouble, he can hide them and they will disappear among the slaves and he will save their life. He doesn't proudly saying, I have 13 already.
That is certainly a possible read, and one could argue clearly from the absence in the text that might be Jacob's thinking.
He's saying later that it will kill mother and sons. He's afraid, he's praying to God, and he said, Emal Banim. So he was aware that Esav might, he doesn't know what Esav will do, but he is afraid about his children.
Good. Ziggy and then George.
A couple of things. I think rather than calling him manipulative, I think he's acting like a typical businessman. You don't go into negotiations telling what you've got, so you kind of negotiate. So that's one thing. The other thing is when you open that paragraph, it's talking about malachim. And to me, malachim is, angels, not messengers. So it's interesting way of framing who he sent to Esav. So if he sent malachim, in other words, the angels are working on his side, then he didn't have a whole lot to worry about because he had God on his side. And then maybe he just wants to avoid bloodshed and just do good, but he's not concerned, very concerned. But he is trying to come to an amicable agreement with his brother.
Good. So Ziggy makes a very interesting point. The word that Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim, why doesn't it say Anashim? Why doesn't it say men? He sent men like military men, but it says Malachim. So maybe the double meaning of that word, both messengers and angels, is to hint to his brother that God is with him. It goes back to the comment that Ilan made earlier. Until he gets back to the land of Canaan, God has promised that he would watch out for him. And this is his way of saying to his brother, don't try anything on me because I've got God on my side. Isn't it amazing how much can be read into these few passages by what is and what isn't stated? It really is a marvelous text. George.
Yeah, well, I was going to say pretty much what Ziggy said, that malachim, it could mean messengers, human or angels. But he didn't say anything they saw at this point. The messengers did. He told the messengers to say something. He's not talking to them yet.
Well, okay, fair enough, but
He's sending a messenger or angel.
but the implication is the messengers are speaking in the voice of Yaakov. So
Yeah.
therefore, they are describing Yaakov through their words, Yaakov's intention. Now let's move to a different, so Rashi, right, presents the comments that Jacob makes as a way of understanding the unusual term Garti, right, to describe a sense of temporariness, of humility, of lack of power, and at the same time of a connection to his roots. I stayed connected to our parents' tradition, Esav, by holding fast to the mitzvot. I have not been corrupted by Lavan. I'm a moral person. And in my morality, I have reflected on the wrongdoing that I did to you. And I want you to know that as a man of mitzvot, you can trust me moving forward, right? All of that might be implied in that word Garti. Now let's take a look at the Sfat Emet and see how he reads that word and what he takes from it. It seems that this is the purpose of mitzvot, to direct the organs and the tendons of a person, because the body is a garment for the soul and spirit, and a person must know that they are a foreigner, a ger, in this world. Okay, so the Sfat Emet is taking the two comments of Rashi's and bringing them together and saying Rashi's first comment, which means a sojourner having temporary dwelling, and the second comment about observing mitzvot come together in a very fascinating, mystical fashion. Let's look at it again. It seems that this is the purpose of mitzvot, to direct the organs and the tendons of a person, because the body is a garment for the soul and spirit, and a person must know that they are a foreigner in this world. What do you think, without reading ahead to Rabbi Smokler's comments, what do you think the Sfat Emet is implying here? What's he talking about? What is the tendency that we as human beings feel in our own lives from time to time, particularly given the last year and a half with COVID? Ruth Ann.
We don't really own anything. It's like temporary. Everything that we acquire, everything that we have is just, it's not really ours. It's like our clothing. It's
Yeah,
just it's just temporary.
Good. I think you said it best, right? Our bodies are working one day just fine, and then we wake up all of a sudden, something's not working, and we realize the fleeting nature of what we think is strength is actually not strength. There's a whole holiday that we just celebrated recently that reminds us of the fragility and the temporariness of life. What is that holiday?
Sukkot.
Exactly. Right? We build these strong structures to, make us assume that everything is safe and that we're safe. And in reality, that's not the case. And the Sfat Emet is pointing that out in his comment. Yeah, Ellen.
Oh, thanks. This is pretty amazing. Because the soul is a gift from God. It's a part of God. And the body is how that. So we can never, even though we are of this world, we're really never of this world. It's a concept that I'm having it's like thinking that two very different things are this. It's hard for me to grasp it.
Yes, that's it. Actually, if you read a lot of Buddhist literature, and there's a book that slipped my mind, but God, it's such a wonderful book about a Buddhist teacher who goes on a journey to discover that he only finds truth by recognizing that there's very little of existence, and what is existence is all in his mind. and that we live in this tension between, or we should live in this tension between, as you said it, Ellen, you described it beautifully, the tension between feeling like everything around us is solid and permanent and we're here, and on the other hand, nothing is solid and nothing is permanent, and it's all a figment of our imagination. And in fact, the only thing that exists is the presence of God. And everything that we think is anything but that is not that at all. But the Sfat Emet is saying mitzvot are the key to bring some kind of concretization into this world. The mitzvot are that which help us stay grounded in a world where we might lose ourselves to the ephemeral, to the fact that nothing really exists outside of God. And we don't spend a whole lot of time living in that place, do we? That's not something, unless we really do a lot of meditation and thinking in that way, that, you know, that's a part of our being. I saw Judy, you had your hand up, and I think Ruth Ann. So Judy and then Ruth Ann.
Well, the Sfat Emet, in my view, makes us all sojourners, and not just Jacob, and not just, I mean, that we're all walking around with our soul covered by our skin and our bodies and everything, trying to figure it out and do well, hopefully. But
Very nice, exactly. And how often do we think that in this world versus ignore that reality? And Jacob's lesson here, and of course through the Sfat Emet, is to remind us that we are all just passing through. So we should travel lightly as we pass through this world. Who did I say? Oh, Ruth Ann, and then Lauren.
You mentioned solid, physical. We're limited by only seeing the solid and physical because our brain is part of that solid and physical. But then the mystery is, where does the spiritual somehow comes in there? But we're limited to see only the physical.
Good, Ruth Ann. So you're actually anticipating exactly where Rabbi Smokler is going to take us in this study.
I didn't peek.
No, no, but you raised the issue, which is very much the purpose of her lesson. So let's read a little bit of her commentary. Jacob's representation of himself as a ger reflects an essential insight into the nature of at-homeness. As Jacob leaves one temporary home with Lavan and journeys back toward his ancestral home, he contemplates the spiritual power of rootlessness or strangeness. Ger literally means strangeness. To be a stranger is to feel, right, a sense of rootlessness, a lack of belonging. He's feeling that in terms of his physical location, but what the Sfat Emet is inviting us to think about is, can all of us think about that in relationship to our lives in this world, right? Are we just living temporarily in this, not in a specific place, but in this home that we call life? To be a ger is to be on the outside looking in, to inhabit the margins of society, to not be at home in the world. A ger is a newcomer, a passer-through, an unintegrated group member. It is one who is not quite at ease, not settled in their body or in their space. So it would be interesting first, right, to take some time to think about, right, what is it like in our lives if we were to consider ourselves gerim? Even though we live in Los Angeles or in Oregon or, you know, in Seattle or wherever we find ourselves, even though I live on Stonegate Drive, even though I spend a bunch of my time here at Shomrei Torah Synagogue, and I define myself as husband, as father, as brother, as son, as rabbi, and I have all these things that determine a sense of identity. Am I really any of that? All of that? None of that? What does it mean to inhabit the margins of society? To not be at home in this world? Might it also give me insight into those who actually are homeless, who are, lacking roots, to be sensitive to them, those physically, and might it give me sensitivity to those who spiritually encounter a sense of rootlessness, and how might I respond to them? Right? I think all of that implied in this Sfat Emet. So then she continues, setting aside for a moment the body-soul dualism of this statement, the Sfat Emet is gesturing at something much richer. We humans are complex beings comprised of body and soul, material concerns, and transcendent aspirations, physical needs, and spiritual hungers. We live in this earthly world, Olam Hazeh, but are enlivened by higher worlds of supernal consciousness, right? Olam Ha'elyon. We live between states with our feet on the ground and our heads in the heavens, so to speak, rendering us full residents of neither. The Sfat Emet suggests that we ought to keep this tension alive. We ought to stay mindful of ourselves as foreigners, gerim, neither here nor there. So here she adds another really beautiful piece to it. The point is not just to feel rootlessness in this world, temporary in this world. It's not to make us feel as if we have no sense of permanence in this world, but it's to invite us to think about what it means to be part of the supernal world, the world of godliness, the world of the essence of neshama, of ruach, of spirit, of the fact that we are as much a soul as we are a physical being. And we don't spend nearly enough time addressing that part of our being. We don't spend nearly enough of our work, of our living, to enhance that sense of living in the world of godliness, of the spirit, of the mystical, of the metaphysical. And that is essential to a wholeness of our being. Marilyn.
I think a lot of us don't enter that realm unless we're challenged either by confronting our mortality or a cataclysmic event, and then you start to think about it. Otherwise, I think it's more of an effort, or I don't want to use the word effort, but I guess it is, to really think deeper than the titles or what I've accomplished and things like that. I think it's something that you have to work at and be conscious of.
Absolutely. And I do agree with you that it often happens only in a moment of crisis, where we realize that life is so temporary that we begin to ask the question, is this all there is? Or might there be something much deeper going on here? And might I be connected to something far greater than just the physicality of my being? Lauren.
So I had the opportunity to be in the room when my grandson was born. So there's this human being coming into the world with no expectations of what he's going to become. And then I had the opportunity of being with a friend as she was leaving the world. And I mean, both are like, so one's beginning a life and one's ending a life. And they're both in, you start to think of what's one going to become and what one became. And the one who was dying, it's like, she had a wonderful life, but what made her wonderful wasn't all the things she had, because she's leaving all that behind. And what you are left with is how she made you feel, her humor, how funny she was, what kind of friend she was. She had wonderful, she had a wonderful wardrobe, wonderful jewelry, wonderful, who cared? I mean, when you have to clean out someone's apartment after I know that when our mother died, we said, this is what your life comes to, what you're going to keep, what you're going to throw, and what you're going to donate. And it's got to be more than that at the end of somebody's life. It's like the memories you have that person.
Beautiful, Lauren. Thank you. In fact, when you think about a eulogy, rarely does somebody eulogize somebody on all of the material blessings of their life, which may be manifold in that person's life. That's not typically where a eulogy goes. A eulogy speaks more to the ephemeral, to the pieces of a person's being in this world that are more lasting than just the material possessions. And I think the two examples that you gave, Lauren, really are quite stunning in bringing us out of the realm of the metaphysical into a real physical way of framing what the Sfat Emet is trying to teach. Thank you. Judy.
Not that this relates totally, but it reminds me of something I read on Halloween, that in All Saints' Day, they say you die 3 times. One time is when you take your last breath. The second time is when you go into the ground, never to be seen again. And the third time is when you're forgotten.
Wow.
And
wow. Well, we're never, I think, according to the Sfat Emet, forgotten. That's the point. We're never forgotten because we're part of something much larger than the material world in which we live. And that is that sense of connection to God. And that's where Rabbi Smokler goes with the rest of her teaching. So in the 5 minutes that we have left, I think Judy's comment is a perfect segue into framing what she ultimately wants us to remember. The Degel Machane Ephraim, who was the grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, teaches, based upon this verse in Leviticus, especially at the end, right? For the land, God says, is mine, you are strangers, Gerim, residents, with me, Imadi. The Degel Machane Ephraim is going to take a play on this word. What does it mean, Imadi, with me? That we are residents with God. So he says, in this there is a hint of a teaching I heard from a wise man on a verse from Psalms. I am a ger in the land, do not hide your commands from me. It is a known feature of this world that one who is a ger does not have anyone to be close to and to draw near to and to tell about all that happened to him and what is in his heart, since he does not have a friend, neither in Israel nor among the nations. But when he sees a fellow ger, then each one can tell the other all that has happened. As an aside, I just did a funeral for Ray Castellani. Ray Castellani was the guy who created Frontline Foundation. For 32 years, he brought food to the men on Skid Row every single day for 32 years, over 1 million meals. He himself was living on Skid Row as an alcoholic for many years. He could relate deeply to the people who lived on Skid Row. And he actually used to say that the sandwich that I'm giving them is really not what this is about at all. It's not about the sandwich. The food is just a means to touching a person's soul and letting them know that they matter, that they're important. And that's what I think the Degel Machane Ephraim is saying here. It's like when we live as gerim, we don't connect to anybody except another ger, somebody who also lives in that temporary state. Those people can connect because they share something similar, that sense of temporariness. So he continues. It is known that the Holy Blessed One is like a ger in this world because the divine does not have anyone upon whom to rest the divine presence, since we humans are limited. right? What a beautiful idea. Just as we, if we are gerim, don't have anybody connect to, so God is also a ger, because there's nothing, nobody, no essence like God in this world. This is the meaning of David's prayer of the passage from the Psalms that says, I am a ger in the land. I too do not want to be a resident in this world. I am also just a ger in it. Therefore, do not hide your command from me like one ger to another who tells him everything in his heart. This is the meaning of the verse in Leviticus. You are but strangers and residents, imadi, with me. When you are a ger in this world and a resident in the next, then you are with me, because I too am a ger in this world, and therefore will not hide from you my commandments. Like, I don't know about you, but bam, this is such a big idea, because what he's saying here is God is actually saying, as different as God and human beings are, we share a similar essence of being, which is to be strangers. And that difference is that which connects us and binds us together. God is the ultimate stranger to Jews who have always felt like strangers. The mitzvot is the key to remind us that as much as gerim as we are, we're never far from the source that gives us a sense of purpose and being and permanence in this world, and that is God. Right? That's the irony of what it means to be a ger. I'll stop. Ellen, I saw your hand. We'll take a couple comments before we have to wrap up. Please. Ellen, just unmute yourself, and then Marilyn.
I was just waving my hand goodbye. I've got a meeting. I have to
okay.
start. Thank you
All
so
right.
much. Beautiful teaching.
Bye, Ellen. Marilyn, yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to extrapolate this to modern times. Jews have always lived as strangers in the lands that they were in, whether, I don't know whether they was self-imposed or also it was put on top of them by whatever the society was. If Jews live in a land where they no longer feel like strangers, does that negate does that turn them off to being Jewish? Or, I mean, do you know what I'm trying to say?
No, what I think you're trying to say is that, take a look at the last comment by Rabbi Smokler. Precisely through our consciousness of difference, we can join in solidarity. Like a person so very isolated in her unique pain who meets another who shares her story, let us connect in deep empathy. Let us be friends, whispers God, through shared experience. Let us reside together, mindful of our mutual marginality. To be a Jew, Marilyn, is to always feel that sense of rootlessness, of isolation.
Right.
And therefore, that helps us both connect, number one, to others in this world who feel that, who live that, who experience that, and all the more so to God, who God's self is one who experiences rootlessness and isolation. It's the very sense of our similarity to God that draws us through, gives us the ability to connect more deeply to God and the other, the stranger. I think, I'm sorry we had to rush to the end. Jill, we'll have you make the last comment, but I just, this is, so profound in what it is that she's trying to teach us about who we are in our relationship to others and to God. Jill, go ahead.
Yeah, this is like one of those like exploding moments in your head, but what I was thinking about was, if we are all just, how do I put it, cells and molecules and energy, and and you think about it in that sense, and so we're temporary, we're not really, like it's almost like we're not really people per se. We are just an essence, and God is the same in its essence, because God in itself is just a placeholder, a word of something we can't even relate to. We can't even fathom. Then we are the same in some ways.
Yes, that's the most beautiful lesson of this, the whole irony of pride. It's just, yes, that you said it, Joe. So, Neil.
This one, the fact, does Moses come closer to being a Toshav as opposed to a Ger because of his relationship with God relative to us?
Wow. Oh my God. What a fascinating question. Wow. That's for a whole other lecture. What a beautifully thoughtful question, Neil. Maybe yes, maybe no. But at the moment where Moses feels so much of a toshav to God, what does God say to Moshe? Lech red, get down from the mountain. Your people need you, and you shouldn't be up here with me. So maybe what God needs to remind Moshe is he is just as much a ger, even in his close relationship to God, as all of us. So, all right, everybody, thank you for the learning gets so rich with all of you and your comments. So thank you. And I will not see you next week. There's no class next week because of
Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to
Shalom.
all of you. By the way, I am teaching on Shabbos a text. So whether you're online or in person, I'm going to hand you the text so you'll be able to study. It's about Dinah's rape. That's what we're going to be looking at this coming Shabbat.
Okay.
So
Thank you, Rob.